get going. So thanks everyone for making some time tonight. These kids to fall in love with the game, and then to hopefully develop through the game, and then to hopefully fulfill their dreams in the game, whatever that looks like for them. So again, thanks so much. We're really appreciative for the time and effort that parents put into to this. So quick little introduction. My name is Jordan Stewart. I work for the Calgary Minor Soccer Association. And really my position is the technical leader. So you can think of me as your club's TD, but a TD for the clubs, if you will, and for the district of Calgary. I've worked with players all the way down from U8, U6 kind of level, the little kickers, the kind of timbits, all the way through to university-aged players. I was the former Alberta Soccer Association regional coach for the southern half of the province and the Alberta Recs director. And really my portfolio within that role was around player development, some district outreach, so helping some of the rural districts and even Calgary at the time to develop and to push things forward, and then to also support and coach education. And through my time in the game, you might not know it by looking at me, but I've had almost 18 years involved in the game in a coaching capacity, not just in a playing capacity. I've worked in a wide spectrum of organizations across this province and even a little bit across the country. So worked in your grassroots clubs, much like most of you have registered in, all the way through to professional academies and the PSO and national youth team setups, as well as college, university, and then some community outreach as well. So I've got a fairly diverse background and lens on the game, especially here in Alberta. I was born and raised in Edmonton and just outside of Edmonton, and then transplanted into this beautiful city of Calgary 5 years ago. So a little bit about me, nothing too crazy. That's definitely not why you tuned in tonight. So part of what we want to share as well is some global Calgary Minor Soccer Association info with everyone. So photo IDs, just an awareness. If you've got kids that are U10 plus, they need their photo IDs done, and you can either do them at the CMSA office or at the Genesis Center, and your dates and times for the Genesis Center are listed there. If you're going to come down to the CMSA office, please book an appointment, and all of that info and all of that process can be done online at calgaryminersoccer.com. And another little reminder for people, we are going to be revamping our brand and our logo and what CMSA actually is. So if you can follow that QR code that's on your screen now to provide us some feedback, that would be sensational. Leslie in our marketing department would love that, and she would be forever grateful. And then lastly, we are back to hosting some tournaments. The Calgary Cup is going to be amazing this year. We've got a lot of interest from out of town already, and some teams traveling in from all over Canada. You can see there that it's U9 plus, and it's from July 29th to August 1st. If you want to put a team in, or if you've got a team that wants to enter, please reach out to Kim Kerr at Calgary Minor Soccer, or just send an email, to info@calgaryminersoccer.com. Apologies if you're going to be hearing my dog in the background. He's barking now. These are some of the joys of working from home a little bit. So I wanted to start off the chat tonight around the 4 principles that we're operating under within CMSA. So when we make decisions and we're doing research and we're thinking about how we push the game forward and be innovative and be a leader nationwide, these are the 4 principles that we constantly go back to make sure that we're adhering to. So are we making the game accessible for everyone? Are we being inclusive and sensitive to people's diverse needs and preferences? And are we making the game safe? Safe both in a physical sense, but also in a psychological sense that will lead to an enjoyable experience for players, for coaches, for officials, for parents, and for club staff and administrators as well. We're really trying to change the culture and really trying to shift this entire community to one that's collaborative and one that puts players first all the time with our decision making. So when I started about 18 months ago with CMSA, I took a quick look at, what are we doing? How many players are involved? What are the trends like? What's going right? What's going wrong? And so from that, this is what I found, and these are some of the trends that we identified. So we had a 35% increase in the number of U7s to U9s over the course of about 3.5 years. But as you can see, every single other age group has declined significantly during that time. And so it could be suggested that we don't have necessarily an attraction issue within soccer in Calgary. We have a retention issue of retaining kids in the game. And there's some dramatic decreases there, and it's worrisome from numerous points of view. But some of the changes that we had to make in order to try to improve some of these numbers. And I hope that you'll have that lens tonight of change isn't necessarily bad. I know it's a difficult word, but once we understand what's going on, I think it makes it a little easier. So someone would suggest, though, okay, all the bad players are just leaving the game, right? We've got loads of elite level players and elite level, professionals and national team players that we're producing. And while this data that you're seeing here on the screen is about 10 to 12 years old now, the numbers haven't changed that significantly. And so we're not doing an amazing job, even as a country, producing elite top level professional players or even professionals as a whole. I guess if your kids want to become a pro, you should probably pack up and go down to Costa Rica, get on the beach and enjoy life down there, because you've got a far better chance of making it a reality down there as of now. But this is why Canada Soccer, Alberta Soccer, and Calgary Minor Soccer have identified key areas that need to be modified within the game. So this led us to making a 3-year plan. So this 3-year plan is the technical plan from 2021 to 2023. This is available readily on our website, and you can go on and have a look and see what we're supposed to be doing when and how we're doing as well. And so here's a brief overview of one of the spheres of govern. So we want to make sure that we're governing the game in a proper manner. And so we've started to shift some pieces, and some of these bits are just ongoing through the course of time as well. The next one is around developing the game. We want to make sure that we develop the game in partnership with our clubs, with ASA, and with Canada Soccer to make sure that we are pushing the game forward in the right direction. And you can see some of these things have been delayed. Some of them have been put on the back burner for a brief period, and there's really going to be a concerted effort this year into making sure those things both get started and completed. And then lastly, it's around growing the game. And some of these initiatives will be going on for all 3 years. Some of these initiatives will be stopgaps for other pieces, but really this gives you an overview. And like I say, you can go onto our website and find this information for yourself. I'd be remiss tonight if I didn't talk a little bit about what the Canada Soccer player pathway looks like. And so while this diagram can be confusing to some, once you start to get an overview and an idea of how it works, it becomes quite clear. So typically all players would start in this grassroots area in the bottom. They would move upwards into whatever stage fits them from both an interest, potentially an ability, and potentially even a desire standpoint. And so what you have is you've got soccer for life in terms of a community stream or recreational. You've got a competitive soccer for life as you move through the age groups. And then you've got your developmental leagues, your professional club academies, your U17 and U20 national teams, and that. Within Calgary, this is what it looks like. So these are the programs that operate within each one of those boxes. So you'll see CMSA operates from number 1, 2, and 3 into number 7. While we have some operational responsibility within the AYSL, we don't actually submit teams. We're not part of developing players there or anything of that sort. You'll then see off to the right a Rex program and a Whitecaps boys program. They're both now run by the Whitecaps organization that feed into our national team stream and the Whitecaps Girls Elite Recs in Vancouver, as well as the residency program on the boys' side. From there, national teams, professional clubs, in terms of a CPL with Cavalry, and also an MLS club within the Whitecaps. Here within Box 5, that train to compete, your performance leagues, your universities and colleges, there's youth sports, our college streams, which is the ACAC here in Alberta, NCAA, of course, our USL2, and our UWS programs that operate within Calgary here. And then most of us will end up somewhere within CUSA or Calgary Women's playing either recreationally or competitively within our senior years in a soccer for life context. So that gives a quick and brief overview of what a 3-year plan kind of look like. I want to talk briefly about one of these initiatives called competitive balancing. And what competitive balancing is it's an undertaking that CMSA has gone down to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the players and that the players have the right level for the right player. So in indoor, we did one round where it was essentially a big seeding round at the beginning where teams finished. We would give them like with like games, resulting in more meaningful competition more often. And what we found was there was a decrease in the actual goal spread per game. So the results are on the screen there. And what a decrease in the goal spread suggests is that we've actually got more competitive matches more often, and we've got better teams matched together. We see way less blowouts, and we actually find that there's more competitive games. This is something that will continue in outdoor, especially at the older age group. So I won't spend too long on it tonight because I know that you didn't tune in for that one here tonight. Another one of the pieces that we implemented for indoor was the strategies for some lopsided games. So what this is this was 4 strategies within the U10 and U11 age groups to make sure that we had more meaningful competition more often. So if you've got an older child within a CMSA club as well, you might have seen some of these things where if a team goes 4 goals up on the other one, the losing team or the weaker team would add an extra player. We had the mix them up where if it was really, really lopsided and the 2 teams were nowhere close, can we split the players up, mix and match them between the 2 teams, penny them off, and allow them to have a meaningful game on the day? This is really, really tough culturally to get done because people are really tribal. They say, no, my kid plays with this coach, with this team. But if no adults were there, I guarantee you the kids would move better players and weaker players and more developmentally advanced and more developmentally behind players around, and they would make sure that they had a competitive match. So what we have to do is we can't let our adult egos and biases dictate how the children's game is implemented. And then lastly, there was swapping the goalkeepers. So if it was, again, a lopsided game, can you get the goalkeeper who's winning by a lot and maybe working in possession with their feet and distribution, swapped with the other goalkeeper so that now they're facing shots, they're dealing with rebounds, they're having to organize defensively, and this goalkeeper that was getting peppered in the first half actually gets a more meaningful game with them and can get some different developmental outcomes as well. We launched a survey at the end of indoor, and you'll see some random stats throughout this presentation, but 60% of parents within the U10 and U11 age groups didn't actually know about these initiatives. So you can imagine what happened on match day when a coach or a referee suggested these things. There was mass confusion. There was really difficult time buying in. And so we really want to make sure that we educate and that we make people aware of what's going on and why it's actually happening as well. We want to make sure that people and parents are aware of some of the coaching standards that we want to have in place within our leagues and within our clubs. So one of the biggest pieces that we know that provides an enjoyable soccer experience is around the coaching. And our indoor survey confirmed this. It was unanimous across the player, the coach, and the parent surveys what was most important to them. And so here, if any of you are interested in taking coaching courses or trying it, it can be incredibly rewarding. It can be incredibly satisfying. And coaching is one of the best things that I've done. So I couldn't recommend it enough. It's been a fantastic way to give back to the game as well. But where you would start would be these community stream workshops on the bottom here, or you could start at the C license level. Those are your entry points into what Canada Soccer is now defining as more specialized coach training based on who the coach is working with. So age and stage appropriate coaching development and coaching education is a key priority. And so within CMSA, this is where we are. And this chart is on our website as well. You'll see a lot of yellow check marks or yellow circles with a check mark in them. Really, it's the recommended program to support the development of these youth players. We require all of our coaches to have respect in sport. We require them to have a CPIC with a vulnerable sector search. And soon, the coaches will be required to have the appropriate coaching course for the age and stage of player that they're working with. You'll see some of the blue check marks that are written into provincial rules that if that coach doesn't have that course completed, they're not able to actually participate at provincial levels. And then this last one here, this Making Ethical Decisions, is not a new course. It's actually quite an old course within the NCCP. It's going to become a requirement for coaches as soon as the standards for quality soccer take place and roll in as of May of next year. If you want any more information about that, there's lots online, and you can reach out to me at the end and I can provide you some info on the club licensing, but we won't be talking about that here tonight. The stat at the bottom here was really, really intriguing to us, that it kind of confirmed some pieces for us, that a knowledgeable coach who is a good role model was the top response in our recent survey across players, parents, and coaches in what they require, or what they deem necessary for their kids to have a meaningful soccer experience and a positive soccer experience. So with that kind of knowledge and with stats like this at the bottom of this slide, that teams with a qualified coach will lose 5% of kids per year, but teams with an unqualified coach will lose 26% of kids per year. That's staggering. And if we think back to one of those first slides in terms of where our player retention numbers are, coach education and coach development is a key pillar to make sure that our players are having a great experience within the game and are staying involved within the game. This has been a slide that's shared with all of the clubs in terms of what the expectations are from CMSA to have coaches rostered on their teams. And while a coaching license isn't required yet within the rules of CMSA, it will become a requirement quite shortly. If there are any questions at all at any point, please feel free to put them into the chat. I've got it open here and more than happy to stop and to explain anything that needs a little bit more love. We also want to make people aware of some of the educational resources that we've developed in the last probably 5 months. One, and the key one that you're probably tuned into tonight, is around the Grassroots League. This is available on the CMSA YouTube. And if you just type in Calgary Minor Soccer, it will pop up, and then the Grassroots League is right there as well. This gives you a really simple overview. It's a 6-minute video of what the Grassroots League is, what we expect, and it's way easier than reading the 40-page guidebook that I drafted up. So I would recommend having that, having a view of that before things kick off in a couple of weeks. We've also made it a developmental recreational programming video. This is to help clarify some of the language that's used around the U10 and U11 age groups and what those two streams are meant to be meaning. And then lastly, we're going to be producing this Lopsided game strategies video within the next couple of days that will be on our YouTube video or YouTube channel as well. And sorry, just letting some people in, so bear with me for 1 sec. There we go. We're going to briefly just chat quick about the cup competition that CMSA has adopted in terms of the provincial qualification mechanism for our 13s, our 15s, and our 17s. And while most of you probably don't have a child that's in those age groups, there might be a couple of you. It's an opt-in competition. We're going to remove that qualification from the league to make sure that we can provide a memorable experience within this cup competition, that it shifts the focus of league play to encourage more developmental outcomes, to encourage equal playing time. And then your cup games are ones that must win, that bring people out, that are highly entertaining, that are live streamed, that we have a different look and feel for that. So we just wanted to give a quick mention there. We also wanted to give a quick mention around our Women and Girls in Soccer Committee and the initiative around involving, retaining, and progressing women in all 4 facets that you see on your screen. So from the player, the coach, the officials or referees, and then an other kind of piece. So with the players, we've got drop-in nights coming. The first one is April 30th for the 2006 to 2009 age groups. Both boys and girls come in, free play. It's at the Macron Performance Center. And these will be ongoing throughout numerous quadrants of the city and likely every other month to begin with, to really just put a bit of fun back in the game. No structured training sessions, no coaches, just balls everywhere, pennies, and get kids together in an unstructured environment and let them enjoy the game. We're going to have a DJ. We might have some food on hand, but we're just working through those last little details here shortly. And also, we're trying to launch a Big Sister program where we connect university students with our young female teams to provide them with a really positive role model that they can bounce questions off of, that they can look up to, and really that they can develop a connection to keep them involved in the game. We want them to be integrated within the team, so within sessions or within games, and have that resource in a safe capacity from the club. So providing them a safe environment so that hopefully they take up coaching or get involved with the game as well outside of just playing at a university. And there's more details that will come on that very shortly. Next, in terms of the other piece, these are some of the resources that we want to be creating and connecting people to. And an example of this is the International Women's Day that CMSA was a part of recently. We launched a social media campaign. We produced a club toolkit as well to celebrate the day and to honor the theme of this year, which is Break the Bias. And we produced a wonderful webinar with Shahiza Haji, which I would recommend anyone on this call to go and watch. Again, it's on our YouTube. She's got an amazing story. She's a local Calgary entrepreneur and has used a lot of lessons through sport to better herself and her business. And lastly, from a coaching lens, we want to celebrate the fact that there's 12 female coaches from the Calgary region on the C license right now, and it's an all-female C license. I believe it's the only one that's ever ran. It's been attempted numerous times, and CMSA is really, really proud to be supporting this worthwhile initiative. Give me one sec. Sorry, my other screen just decided to turn off. So hopefully we can get back going here. Technology, it's supposed to make our life easier, right? Hopefully everyone can see that. If you can populate the chat, if you can see that, that would be great, or just give a reaction, that would be fantastic. CMSA is subsidizing this course, and we want to encourage any women on this call as well that coaching's fantastic. It's very rewarding. And that it would be amazing if we could have more women provide a great role model for our female players. And then lastly, from a referee and official context, we have expanded our pool of female referees. We had initially 17 youth female referees at the beginning of this year, and we've managed to recruit another 35 into refereeing and officiating. So if you see referees with a teal shirt on, and I'll talk more about this later, we expect that people treat them in a slightly more positive manner. Oh, jumping right into it right now. There we go. So referees, some of our core pillars are attraction, retaining, and progressing refereeing, because without refereeing, games are difficult to take place. So we want to make sure that we're retaining our referees. And one of our initiatives is the Teal Shirt campaign. All of these brand new referees, these first year referees, will have a different refereeing jersey than anyone else. And it'll be a teal color. And on the back, it'll say new referee. And so this is an awareness, much like a learner's or an N in a new driver or a resident as a doctor. They're learning. They're going to make mistakes. And that if we choose to abuse these kids and these people who are brand new to something, shame on you. It's that simple. And I might be preaching to the choir right now. I might have loads of good people on the call, but we want to make sure that refereeing is a viable option for people to be involved in the game. And so having an awareness that these people are brand new, that they're giving it a go, and that they're really trying to enjoy the game of soccer through a different lens rather than just playing, we need to support them. And we need to shift the culture in terms of referee abuse. Even the odd, come on, ref, it's just not acceptable anymore. These people are giving up their time. They are trying to make the game better. And at the end of the day, they're learning it as well. So I'll get off my soapbox a little bit right now, but we're also providing all of these brand new referees a mentorship program where they will be seen 4 times within their first 20 games. So within that first season, they'll have 4 touch points with a mentor to make sure that we wrap a big woolly coat around them, that they're connected in with the referee community, and that when they have questions or when they have issues, they've got someone to go to, and they've got someone who's been through it and has lived some of the struggles that they're going to face. So we want to make sure that we're helping out our referees as well. Awesome. I'm going to take 2 seconds. I'm going to have a quick drink. If there's any questions or anyone in the chat that you want to populate on the kind of global things that we're doing, feel free to now. Excellent. So there's one question in the chat right there. When will our kids get refs? Well, as of right now, we start our referees within the U10 age group. We're currently looking at that as well to see, is that the right spot for them to start learning the game? Is it the right time that the players actually need a neutral match official to help guide the game? But the U7s to U9s, you won't see any sort of referee involved in the game. And we think that this will have positive consequences to help players learn some of the rules of the game, to help coaches actually learn some of the laws of the game as well. But then also to shift that culture that I was talking about, that there is no one to abuse anymore, right? So we have an actual cultural shift that will encourage people to be mindful of how they conduct themselves on a sideline as well. There's another question here that I will get into, so I'm not going to answer it right now, but I will make sure that I address that. So if no one has seen any of the other 7s to 9s chats that I've delivered over the last 16 months or 15 months or so here, I'm going to speed through key pieces of it and try to hammer home really why we're doing what we're doing and why this shift is taking place within Canada and within Canada soccer especially. And change is always hard, right? Change is a difficult process. Change is not easy on people. Change is always uncomfortable. But if we think about progression and how we don't smoke on airplanes, we strap kids in with seatbelts and car seats, and Coca-Cola is no longer medicine, what we get is we get improvement, which is the right-hand side of this diagram, rather than just monkeying around with that triangle just for the sake of changing it. And we believe that the research and best practice shows that this model is a definite improvement on what we're doing, because these changes have to occur, because the current structures and those traditional programs that we would have seen and we probably grew up through and our older children grew up through, they don't facilitate desirable objectives such as providing sport for all or developing elite athletes. And our data shows that our traditional model wasn't doing that. And those are the numbers that I shared straight off the hop tonight. And part of why we're doing this is because there's a growing belief that rather than the four corner model, providing a tech tac, a physical, a mental, and a social emotional, and training them in isolation. It's always connected in everything that we do, both on the field and off the field. And really, the underpinning of it is that mental, social, and emotional corner that fuels the technical development, the tactical improvements, and the physical developments within the player. And that's always surrounded within the culture that we have and we exist in within Calgary, to then fuel participation, to progression, to performance within our players. And so I've got a question in the chat. It says, how is CMSA providing sport for all? Well, there's numerous ways in which we're doing it. We're providing playing pathways for our youth players and developing a stronger connection with both CUSA and Calgary Women's to make sure that players flow through the youth game and into the adult game. There's coaching from a Soccer for Life perspective as well, that people can come back to the game. There's refereeing as well, that they can stay active and enjoying the game in a different capacity. Then there's also administration, where the people organizing and helping to facilitate, volunteering within clubs, becoming a board member within your club. There's numerous ways that the game actually provides a lifelong sporting experience for everyone. And we have to acknowledge that every single decision that we make, our little district over here on the right-hand side, is both influenced by the system, affects the system, and affects the environment and the personal player. Because at the end of the day, the human and the player is what ultimately always gets affected by any decision that we make or is made by any of these other layers. So we need to be cognizant of that, and that's something that we've been really, really sensitive to when making some of these changes. And so I always ask parents, how do you believe your club and coaches actually select their players? So in a tiered, in a structure like that, what are those evaluation criteria? And if you can take 2 seconds, maybe populate the chat box in terms of how you think your club would segregate or to sort the kids that are at their club. Awesome. So one says years played. So just based on how many years, your developmental age, like-minded players. I would hope that. Experience, skill, attitude. Yeah, there's probably some motivation there. Their coachability, their skill, certainly. And I see a question there in terms of the development program. I'm needing a little bit more context because CMSA doesn't actually develop the players. What we do is we try to ensure that the teams and players have got the right level for them. Usually when we're on Zoom, I launch a poll on this, but since we've shifted to Teams, we'll keep it moving. And I will get back to the question that's in the chat there, I promise. So Canada Soccer asked this question and did a big long-term player development survey. That's what LTPD stands for, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But 50% of these coaches, these U9 to U12 coaches, the coaches that you're going into in a year or two potentially, said skill was how they selected players. Purely subjective and perceived skill. And all of the research around talent identification, talent development, talent selection shows absolutely no correlation between skill or performance at these young age groups and elite level performance. So the question has to be made, why do we continue with this method of selection? Is it just that we don't have another method of selection? We don't have another method of tiering and sorting kids? I would beg to differ and say that we probably do. We're just not able to change, and we're not able to actually adapt in the ways that we need to because of some really strong cultural pieces. And this is straight from Canada Soccer and the research that they've done. And the traditional model of choosing a select number of players based on their performance levels at a specified time, organizing them into a team, and then competing against other teams is flawed in these ways. It doesn't accurately predict potential or future performance. It often will turn away those players who might have high potential but are inexperienced right now. An early selection prior to puberty, which is physical maturation, implies early exclusion of the majority and can discourage those players who might become as good or better if given the time and chance to develop. And really, those characteristics that define talented athletes in early age are not the characteristics that define elite athletes later in their career. You'll often see the talented athletes in early age are the early developers, the big, strong, fast, powerful, the ones who have been playing for numerous years or training in their backyard with their dog and their family and their older brother. Those are the ones that are deemed talented, and thus we pour all of our resources into them, often disregarding the masses. Because we always expect the developmental journey to be like this, very linear, very straight with constant progression. And in reality, it looks more like that. Lots of time spent going left and right and backwards and forwards and up and down and sideways and all over the place. And hopefully without a defined endpoint. Hopefully we keep progressing and we keep trying to push. And so there's a disconnect here. And I think as parents, I'm a new parent myself, and while I don't have ones that are as old as you yet, I will say my almost 2-year-old, there is an expectation that after today he will be able to do that tomorrow, and then he'll be able to do that and be able to do that, and it is already becoming a very non-linear journey with him, and it's fascinating to be involved with. So I think having that awareness that it's not always straightforward and that sometimes it goes left, right, up, down, can be a positive thing to have that awareness. And part of this research that we did when undertaking some of these modifications, where we wanted to look at what a positive developmental setting actually looks like and what the research tells us. And this research is from Canada as well. You'll see the name at the bottom right there, Cote. Jean Cote, if you get a chance, please read some of his research, as he does a lot in the areas of positive youth development. And he's an amazing researcher and academic. But really, it's around that physical and psychological safety, us providing the correct and appropriate structure within CMSA. And that's some of the piece there in terms of there was a question in the chat in terms of a developmental program. Really what we're doing is we're providing a clear and consistent, age-appropriate and appropriate adult supervision within the context of soccer and of that competition mechanism. We want to make sure that there's supportive relationships and that there's opportunities to belong, that inclusivity piece. That really our sport models positive social norms. So the idea of how society should operate, and not the typical masculine, gladiator, aggressive, competitive model of sport. Because, well, someone's going to say, well, how is that preparing them for life? And I would say, is life that aggressive and competitive and that ruthless? Some industries might be, but I would argue that life could be a little bit better than that. That we support efficacy, and that what we do has to be child-centered and promote empowerment, autonomy, and opportunities to experience challenge and difficulty and setbacks. That we want skill building to occur, and that we want to make sure that these are all integrated with family, school, and community efforts all taken into account as well. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the match format, and I've witnessed it over a year, regardless if these 8-year-olds were playing 11-a-side or if they were playing 1v1, children always compete as long as it's meaningful competition and they're competing with the right level of person and player. And what usually happens is us as adults, we compare. And really, comparison is the thief of joy. It's the thief of joy. So if we spend all of our time selecting and tiering and comparing and trying to sort them, we're sucking the joy right out of the game. At what point do we ask what the kids want? Because there is a UN Charter of Rights for Children, and Canada is signed off on that. So at what point do we as a community and we as clubs actually ask the kids what they want? Because we often see competition as master, and it doesn't actually serve the athlete in their long-term development. And so I alluded to long-term player development. And this document here is starting to show its age a little bit and has been revised slightly by Canada Soccer within their grassroots standards. But this is the basis of what we plan the programming and what we encourage our clubs to be doing from an active start. So probably what you've just gone through or what you're going through and into a fundamentals. And you'll see how it builds out a little bit bigger. You'll see no league standings in a jamboree format where the emphasis is on fun. This was back in 2009, this recommendation was made. It has taken us, if I can do the math correctly, 12 years to get to this point. So you can imagine how difficult the cultural change is going to continue to be if it's taken us just 12 years to get to this point. You'll see things like players play equal playing time and try all positions, including goalkeeping, at a certain time. So there's something behind it. There's some research. There's some backing. And this is how it's been revised to. Is the Canada Soccer Grassroots Standards. This is essentially the document that guides a lot of what I do and that ensures that we are aligning to Canada Soccer. So there was a question in the chat, well, how do we keep up with Vancouver and Toronto and all of these major centers in their player development? And I would actually ask a different question. Are they doing a good job? Are they doing an amazing job at our U17, our U20, and our senior team, national team levels? Because if you go per capita, based on the players that are in there, you might have a different perspective. Ontario will continue to dominate the number of players that are in a national team, just based on sheer volume of people within Ontario. And so when MLS had their territory rights, Toronto FC only had the 50-mile radius around their training ground, because that was the same amount of players as the entire province of Quebec, which Montreal Impact at the time had. That's now CF Montreal. And that was the same amount of players that the rest of Canada was available to the Whitecaps at the time. So you can think about that center of population there producing loads and loads and loads of players. So I'm glad I could help answer that question. And really, this is what we're looking at. So you'll see this broken down in another screen as well, but our U7s are looking to play 3v3. The U8s 4v4, and U9s will play 5-a-side with a goalkeeper. We've had a lot of feedback both from clubs, from parents, from the players themselves, and what they want and how this should look. So we've taken that and we're trying to make sure that we implement that feedback and adjust to tailor these bits to what Calgary demands. And so I'm getting lots more questions in the chat, which is great. I'm just going to I'll skim through a couple in a moment, and let me just get through this piece here. You'll see here referees are game leaders. So game leaders. So we've developed the program. We're going to launch the game leader program in indoor, which will be a coach training, an adult training, an older sibling training to actually promote positive social norms within our matches. And so there's a question here that says, my U8s last year never played a 4v4 game. Why? That's a great question. I'd love to chat with you about that offline. Was it a numbers piece? Was it the amount of players that the club had? Was it an organizational piece on our part? And it says, ultimately, can you deliver? Yes, we will deliver. We are committed to delivering this. We are committed to making this change. And we are going to deliver a phenomenal experience for these players this outdoor. I'm here. I've recorded it. This will be on YouTube. If we fail to deliver that, there's evidence of it. But we are committed to making sure that these 7s to 9s have got a phenomenal experience. And so, Anthony, I can see that you've brought this up last year at the festival. My email and such will be at the end here. You can feel free to reach out with that, and we can have a conversation offline. You'll see here in terms of the other standards for the 7s to 9s, player coach ratios. That matches exactly what we're asking for our match day rosters. And we want to make sure that players are playing, that we have got minimal kids on the side of the field as subs. We need to make sure that we're tending to these players' needs and that we're structuring a season length that meets their needs. You'll see 10 to 22 weeks. It's a massive range because we're a very diverse country, and Canada Soccer has to cater to fit all of those different environments. Ellis, I see your question as well. Feel free to reach out, and we have actually addressed that, which I will cover here shortly in the presentation. Part of the data and part of the research that we've utilized in terms of making this shift was around this Manchester United 4v4 pilot scheme. So they used to have their U9s play 8v8, and that was the format of choice from the English FA and the clubs at the time. So what they did is they broke it down and they said, right, we're going to have teams play 8-a-side. We're going to have them play a whole bunch of different 4v4 games and see what gets better outcomes. And we're also going to survey people based on how they felt about these different formats and what they deemed important. And so the quantitative analysis, they just counted how many passes, how many scoring attempts, how many goals, 1v1, and dribbling skills did these players create. And here's what they found. So they played numerous different games, a 2-goal game, 1 goal and 1 goal. My team defends this, your team defends that, we play. Line ball, where there's a line drawn and players dribble or pass over to score. Just an end zone almost, like American football. A goalkeeper game, where the exact same, 2 goals, but now we have a goalkeeper in them. And then lastly, a 4-goal game, where my team would defend 2, your team would defend 2, and I would score on your 2 and you would score on my 2. And then lastly, the 8v8 game. And you can see the 8v8 game didn't win in one single category. It was actually blown out in numerous categories if you look at it. And so what that tells us is 4v4 is going to be a format compared to 8v8 in this very small study, is going to result in more passes, more actions, more football interactions, more scoring attempts, 500% more goals scored. And what's better than scoring a goal? I don't know anyone who frowns after they score a goal. More 1v1 encounters, so players are having to make decisions more often, and 280% more dribbling skills and tricks. I don't know, the best players in the world that get paid a lot of money seem to be the good dribbling ones that are quite skilled. And the qualitative results, so the actual survey that was put out just after this was finished was 80% positive comments from the people involved within the club, the coaches, the directors, and the administrators. But parents had a more difficult time. Only 68% had positive comments from the players, and 75% had positive comments from the players there. I want you to keep these numbers in mind because we did a very similar qualitative analysis and survey at the end of indoor. So keep these numbers in mind. So I hope this portion will answer some of the questions that floated in through the chat. And if they haven't, I'll make sure to scroll back through the chat and answer all of those questions. So the 7s to 9s, they'll still be in this quadrant-based match day and in the Grassroots League. What it's going to look like, though, is slightly different. And like anything, year 1, you learn a lot. You get a lot of feedback and you reiterate and you redesign and you take that feedback on and it becomes better. Year 2 becomes better, year 3, year 4, and this will grow to become far, far better. I want to make sure that we talk about the open roster concept because this is a key piece that allows your kids flexibility in finding meaningful competition on the day. There should never be a lopsided game or a blowout in one of these. There shouldn't be. And if there is, it is the adults, both from the clubs and from CMSA, that are lazy and who are not doing what they need to be doing on the day. It is that simple. And so we've given lots of flexibility to the clubs to say, right, when we pair these players up based on certain parameters, when we group them, there's still lots of flexibility on the day that if it's going sideways, stop it, change it, modify what we're doing, and we go again. Because we need to make sure that we've got that flexibility for the players so that they have an enjoyable experience. As I've said already, and as you've seen within that CSA grassroots standards, 7s will play 3v3, the 8s 4v4, the 9s 5v5, and they'll have corresponding field sizes to make sure that it relates to the age of the player. So the U9s will obviously play on a bigger field than the U7s. The U9s will also have a goalkeeper, which we'll talk about shortly, and what that looks like and feels like and smells like on the day. If anyone hasn't read Amanda Visic's fun maps and the fun integration theory, I would highly suggest you do. And we replicated this within some of the indoor survey that we just did to get it, almost identical results based on what people deemed important and what they wanted out of their sporting experience. So I'd encourage you to read that as well. We really want to make sure that we abide by this principle of when we live local, we play local. And so someone is going to say, well, that's going to reduce the amount of opponents that we play against. And I'm going to say, you're probably right in some contexts. We might have fewer opponents on the day, but if we're going to be accessible and we're going to be inclusive, we have to bring the game as close to families as possible and then grow it from there. Now, I'm not saying that that's all that's going to happen, because there will be opportunities for some varied opposition, for some travel within the city, to give players a different experience as well, and to match them up into different quadrants as well. But fostering a sense of community, making the game really accessible and removing barriers to entry is how we're going to grow the game and how we're going to retain players within the game. And really want to hammer home this last piece, that seriousness is the thief of playfulness. And if we can try to have this as playful and enjoyable as possible, I think we're going to be on to some success here. Ellis, I see your comment there in the chat, and I will get into that. The U7s, 3v3 match format with no goalkeepers. They will have those mini goals. I've heard some people describe it as dinky soccer. It's not dinky. What it is it's age and stage appropriate for those children. And so we're trying to make sure that the player needs, where they are psychologically, physically, emotionally, technically, everything, it happens. Seeing a comment there, 2v2 with a goalkeeper is pretty tough. Well, there's no goalkeepers, as you can see here. So let's make sure that as parents, we have an awareness of this. Your coaches will have an awareness of this. Your clubs will have an awareness of this. And I actually believe that if some child really just wants to play as a goalkeeper and that's what they love at 6 years old, who are we as adults to say, no, you can't play in goal? Why not just ask them and have a conversation like, hey, do you want to try something different? Nope, want to stand in goal. Well, okay, stand in goal then. For me, that's the way we need to be approaching this. We have to be flexible. We have to put the individual's needs first. So while we're encouraging no goalkeepers, there's going to be kids who just stand in goal, who like to hang out on the crossbar. There's going to be that. Don't be angry when you see it. Really, really basic rules. Dribble or pass in to restart. No throw-ins. If anyone's tried to control an aerial ball as a 6-year-old, when a throw-in is coming at them, when they really haven't developed a very good first touch, it's really difficult for them. And also, when we dribble and pass in, we allow more 1v1 play. We allow the game to have a flow. We allow for the ball to be in play more often, rather than a child standing there trying to throw it in to 2 teammates against 3 opponents, trying to find the open player. The other piece is, when a team scores, just run back, touch your goal, have a little celebration. And while that's happening, the team that got scored on, pull the ball out of their net and just play. No formal kickoffs. We don't need to have this kind of professionalization and structure within the young kids' games. We need to make sure that the ball is in play as often and as frequent as possible. And then lastly, no scores, no standings, which I think everyone is aware of within this. The U8s, so a 4v4 match format, again with no goalkeeper. And someone's going to say, well, there's always going to be a goalkeeper. Well, if there's a goalkeeper, let's encourage these players to be playing out. The reason as well why we're suggesting no goalkeepers, because if we look at what modern goalkeepers do and what the goalkeepers of the future are going to do, they're going to be involved more and more and more in open play. They're going to be involved with their feet. They are not going to be just the shot stopper and cross collector of old. They are going to need to make sure that they can play with their feet and they've got good distribution. A dribble or pass in as well. The same scoring system where if you score, you run back, the other team can just play, and away we go. The U9s will move into a 5v5 match format, including a goalkeeper. Dribble or pass in as well to restart. And we want to make sure that we're able to increase the variety of opponents that these U9s have. And so this is some of those pieces that get tailored for our local environment. And what our local environment suggests is that a lot of parents and a lot of clubs seem to suggest that they have these superstar U9 teams. I've yet to see one. I'm not going to lie to anyone. I've been watching this for an entire year. I've yet to see an entire group that is by far head and shoulders advanced against anyone else. But if you do have some good groups within your clubs, we're allowing and we're going to facilitate certain quadrants hosting like with like matches on those ability-based weekends. And you'll see a little bit of travel to other quadrants of the city. All of these details are going to come out right away, so please don't fret. This is how we are going to, I'm not going to suggest, but we are going to group the players for these match days. So there's two reasons for this. Reason one, social relationships are going to provide an opportunity for players to have more unstructured play time. If you look at any sort of developmental journey within elite players around the world, unstructured play time within the game is a key component of athletic development. Mixed age play is also a key component of it. So if we ensure that we're putting the kids that live on the same block, that go to church together, that go to school together, that ride the bus together, that know each other, that are friends together, we've got a far better likelihood of these kids staying involved in the game because they show up and they play with friends. The same way as they would go out and play at recess. So that's reason one. The other reason is because we know that players that enjoy playing together will continue to play the game. It is that simple. I'll use my own bias here as a beer league player now, that I enjoy just going out and playing with a group of guys that I enjoy being around. And if I stop enjoying that, I'll find a different team. The other criteria that we want these clubs to be grouping them by as well is by ability, because we know that some of these kids will have played the game potentially for 5 or 6 years already, and some will be a new player to the game. So what we have is we have a newborn mixed in with a 5-year-old. And in an educational system, you just wouldn't do that. You don't put your kindergartners with your grade 6s. So we know that there's still a necessity to group these players by ability and to have like with like matches on those days. This is how we've tentatively grouped clubs in terms of quadrants based on numbers and where they've registered and where their players and membership base actually live, again, in an effort to try to keep things as local as possible for as long as possible. Oh, I should note actually on this that there will be some changes to this. For sure, there will be some changes. There will be some groups, say CNEU is the only girls group that put a group into the Northeast. They might say, well, we really want to play against other girls groups. Can we go play in the Northwest? And we'll say, well, yeah, of course. If that's really important, then we need to facilitate that as adults. The locations for each one of these will be as follows: the Northeast at the Genesis Center, the Northwest at Dalhousie Community Association, and we've got some really cool stuff planned for both of those locations. Andrew Civil, then Marta Loop for the South and Central. Not saying that we don't have anything great planned for them, but we do have some unique things that we want to try in some of those locations to see what happens and to do some research and pilot some things. Again, I'll communicate that the player grouping, social relationships, and ability-based, a combination of two, that we are modifying things from 2021, and we've taken a lot of feedback. We've realigned again to CSA's grassroots standards, and that we've expanded field sizes accordingly to make sure that we've got the appropriate size for these players. I was going to show a little video. We might actually skip over it. This is straight from the Grassroots League video on YouTube. I hope that people will tune into that. I'll make sure to send it in the follow-up email, and we'll skip over that just for the sake of time at this point. This outdoor, we'd like to pilot some alternative match forms as well. So we might select one location. We'll give everyone plenty of notice that you might show up and it might be a 4-goal game. And what we want to do is we want to replicate the research from Manchester United and the FA to see what the actual outcomes are of some of these other alternative match forms. And so if anyone has looked into what the DFB or the German Federation have done recently, they have realigned to almost identical what we're doing with some of these alternative match forms in it. And we really encourage you to give it a look, because if top nations in the world are realigning to this, we might actually be slightly ahead in what we're doing. And we want to make sure that when we research these things that we're taking into account player experience. Did you enjoy it more or did you enjoy it less? Because our survey responses from indoor, and again, I said keep in mind some of those numbers. Survey responses for these U7s to U9s were as follows. In terms of gaining confidence throughout the year, throughout the indoor, 4.4 out of 5 said, yes, we gained more confidence throughout the year. That is incredible. That should be an applause for all of our clubs and coaches and what they're doing. That is amazing. And then to have a 5 out of 5 belonging, that they felt like they belonged in soccer with their team, is incredible. That is top level work. So I'm really, really happy to see that. In terms of the experience on match day, it was really interesting. Parents rated it as a 3.8 out of 5, players a 4 out of 5, and then coaches a 3.1 out of 5. And I need to do some digging into some of this data to really get down to why coaches aren't enjoying it as much, and why parents potentially aren't enjoying it as much as well. Because the players are suggesting that they are enjoying it. The last row there is around the technical lead, and I think this is probably going to answer or partially answer one of the questions in the chat. That 75% of our coaches didn't even know who the club technical lead was on the day. So we require the clubs to have one technical lead, a designated person that helps to facilitate player movement or entire group movement within that open roster concept. Because at the end of the day, the clubs know the players far better than I will, or far better than any of our CMSA employees ever will. So we want to make sure that they're empowered and that they know what they're looking for and doing. But 75% of coaches said they didn't even know who it was. Parents, 50% didn't even know who it was. So they're either not identified or they're not even present. And then the parents who did know who the technical lead was, 33% said that they were there on a regular basis. So again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. The only thing we can do as adults is screw this up for the kids. And that if we're allowing lopsided games and blowouts to happen, it's no wonder we're losing players within the game, because we as adults are screwing it up. The comment in the chat is the issue we saw in indoor is the fact that the clubs did not have enough in-house staff at the festivals to be moving players back and forth on the teams properly. How does this change moving forward? What I would say is not all clubs are going to have the resources and capacities to have a full-time in-house club member of staff there on match day. They just won't. But what they can do is you can have a parent volunteer. It's one designated person for your club to have a 30,000-foot view and to go, I'm going to watch the next game that my groups are playing to go, is that going to be a good game for that group? Just look at the ability, look at the interest level, look at how the players conduct themselves and their body language. At the end of the day, this is a key component into making this work. And if we're going to continue to be lazy adults and to say, nah, the traditional model is easier, where one group shows up and plays another group for 40 minutes, 3 kids are on the field for each team and 9 are sat on the sidelines picking daisies or chasing butterflies. If we're going to be that lazy, we are not putting the players first. So I'm going to encourage people on this call to hold your clubs accountable, to ask who's our technical lead that's supposed to be there on Saturdays. What's going on? Why aren't they there? Can I help? Can I have some involvement to make sure that this gets done properly? And there'll be some of us on the call that'll say, well, I don't put my kid in soccer to be involved. No problem. Okay. I hope some of us do want to get involved and do partake in some of this as well, because the clubs need you. And so I'll leave this contact information up there for right now. I'm going to have a quick scroll through the chat to make sure that I haven't missed anything, and make sure that the questions get answered.